So this past week was a pretty revealing one for Apple software, as it seems that more and more bugs have started to come to light as of late. So in this episode of Apple Weekly, we're going to talk about those issues, along with an update on iOS 16.1 Beta 3 and iOS 16.0.2. And then after covering the software side of things, we're going to discuss the upcoming iPhone 15 Ultra, why there might not be an October event for Apple after all, why an Apple executive got fired over a TikTok, and more. And as always, if you want to stay updated with all things Apple, make sure to click that subscribe button down below so you don't miss next week's episode. All right, so let's start off by talking about iOS 16.1 Beta 3 and some additional features found in the software. So first off, I do want to confirm that the 14 Pro camera vibration bug is fixed in Beta 3. So this was fixed for the public with iOS 16.0.2 last week, and now in the latest beta of 16.1, that issue has been resolved as well. So if you had that issue in Snapchat or Instagram, that is fixed now. Now we also have an update on the emergency SOS via satellite feature that is coming in 16.1. So this feature, of course, is for the iPhone 14 series, which does have the satellite capabilities built into the phones, and we're seeing that there's now going to be a demo in the settings application for how this feature works. So instead of calling emergency services via satellite like on accident, you now get a demo of exactly how it works in settings. Now, of course, this is not live yet. It is not out yet, even in the beta, so we might see this in 16.1 final, but it appears that if you go into your settings and then go to emergency SOS, there will be a section in here to test out emergency SOS via satellite. And you can see on screen, this is what that, those pages could look like when you're testing this feature. But something that we can currently see in settings in 16.1 Beta 3 is if we go to the App Store section right here, we have a brand new toggle that says in-app content. So this is under automatic downloads, and it says automatically run apps in the background to download content before you first launch them. So I can see this being beneficial for games like Call of Duty Mobile, or really any game that has to install, additional content in the background, or, once you launch the app, it has to download that content. So now it will run like those Call of Duty updates in the background before you even open up the application. So you'll be, closer to ready to play that game when you launch it. So this is a nice new feature added in 16.1. 16.1 Beta 3 also adds an option for adaptive transparency mode on the AirPods Pro first generation. So that is a big new feature in the AirPods Pro 2, but for whatever reason, it looks like Apple might be porting this over to the original first generation AirPods Pro. So you do have to have 16.1 Beta 3 and the latest AirPods Pro beta firmware installed to see this, but it appears that that feature might be coming to the first generation AirPods Pro, which is pretty confusing to me since that was, one of the big advertised features for the AirPods Pro 2. So I'll continue monitoring that and making sure that it's not just a bug and that that feature is actually coming to the AirPods Pro. So we will see that if it is, a real thing and not a bug, in a future firmware update for the AirPods Pro 1. If we go into the settings and go to our focus section and then tap the plus in the top right hand corner, if you go to mindfulness, reading, or work, you will see new graphics for each one. So we have a new graphic here that kind of represents what that focus mode is. You can see this is the one for reading, and then this is the one for work. The tap to pay feature that we've talked about forever here on the channel has finally launched. So it does still run through Square. So you do need to have the Square application set up. And a lot of people thought that tap to pay was just going to work from iPhone to iPhone without needing anything else set up, but that is not the case. It is still run through Square. So tap to pay now just kind of eliminates the need for that physical device for you to tap your phone onto. You can now do it just phone to phone instead of having that little device. And then we also have more code referencing Apple Music Classical. So this was found again in Beta 3. So it seems that we are still getting this application. And again, Apple Music Classical appears to be a separate app and not something that ties in to the music application, which still doesn't make sense to me, but I guess time will tell when we eventually see Apple Music Classical. For all of you classical fans out there, that should be coming, I would think, before the end of the year. So the bypass Captcha feature right here in your iCloud settings where it shows automatic verification. This is really one of the best hidden features in iOS 16, but it hasn't really been working on many applications lately, at least not for me. I've really had like one time ever where it actually worked and bypassed the Captcha, but that's going to be changing soon, and it's going to start working with many more sites. So this automatic verification is kind of just limited to websites and applications that use the private access tokens, but now now Cloudflare has released a new free API called Turnstile, and it's going to allow bypassing CAPTCHAs on any site, even those that are not hosted or using Cloudflare. So you can see here in a press release, they described, how this is going to work and how it's going to unlock bypassing CAPTCHAs for pretty much any website that implements this API, which is going to be awesome. CAPTCHAs are so annoying, so I cannot wait for this to fully roll out and everybody to kind of implement this into their code. And then I did also want to mention that Apple has stopped signing iOS 16 and 16.0.1. So 16.0.2 is now the only version that you can downgrade your iPhone to. So that also indicates that a new software update is coming within the next few weeks, which of course is expected to be 16.1, but it could also be 16.0.3, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But before we get into that, I do want to discuss some of the bugs that people are having in iOS 16, because it really seems over the past week or so, a lot more people have started revealing, bugs and issues that they've been running into with iOS 16. So the first one is CarPlay. So there are still a ton of people having CarPlay issues on iOS 16, 16.0.2, and even the 16.1 betas. So they're having issues with mic sensitivity being too low, like the person on the other end of the phone call cannot really hear them very well, and also audio volume seems to be hit or miss with CarPlay as well. And then we also have a lot of complaints about Spotlight search, just sometimes not even showing any results or just showing really wrong results on 16.0.2. Now this was fixed in 16.1 for me. Still, sometimes if I search for maps, for example, it does not show up here in the top hits. So you can see here I search for maps and it shows Google Maps. It doesn't even show the actual Maps application. Even all the way down here, I go all the way down, it does not show Maps at all, only the Google Maps. It shows the settings for Maps, but not the actual Maps application. So things like that are kind of weird, and you'll see it just completely not working. It shows blank results sometimes, but the blank results seems to be a bug that was in 16.0.2, but has been fixed here in 16.1 beta 3 for me. And then something else I just recently noticed that I haven't really seen anybody else report on is that sometimes I'm not able to slide to clear my notifications when I have the album artwork on the lock screen. So you guys know if you tap on that, it will make the album artwork here on the lock screen. And this prevents me from sliding over on applications or on notifications to clear them. So you can see right there, I'm not able to swipe over to clear them. I have to tap on the X, and even then sometimes I cannot tap on the X to clear my notification. So it seems there is a bug with notifications when you have the now playing section here on the lock screen. And then of course we do have the classic battery drain reports. So it seems like there are a ton of people reporting that battery is just completely draining on 16.0.2 and in the 16.1 betas. Now, I think a lot of people overreact to battery life and just say, draining, even if it's just bad battery life. That's not technically draining battery life. But one thing I will say is the astronomy lock screen has been draining battery for me. That is the only thing I would consider actual draining battery, is the astronomy lock screen, because it does use your location and everything throughout the night. So if you're using that, try taking that off and seeing if it helps. It's not going to completely resolve it, but there are still a lot of reports of battery drain. So I would expect to see some sort of fix for that in the coming months. And then the last bug that is pretty widespread, but has not happened to me, is that some iPhone displays are flickering in dark spots under low brightness after updating. So this appears to be after updating your software only, although some users are reporting that their iPhone display is just randomly flickering from time to time. So I've not had this issue at all really on any iPhone ever, but that does apparently seem to be something that is going on right now. Now, as far as performance goes, I will say that performance is actually pretty good here on 16.1 at beta 3. It's really the same as 16.0.2 in my experience. There's really no difference in the overall raw performance. Really the only difference just comes down to bugs. I mean, that's really everything. So performance, don't expect a big boost. And same with battery life. I mean, battery life feels the same to me on 16.1 beta as it does in 16.0.2. So battery life is just okay. It's definitely not as good as iOS 15. Obviously, that's never the case when a new major software comes out. So don't expect great battery life, for a while. I would imagine that Apple will fix it if there is some type of drain issue going on, but I would not expect, perfect battery life until like a 16.4, 16.5, which is going to be a few months. And then for an update on iOS 16.0.2, really nothing has changed since my previous Apple Weekly episode, and really ever since my What's New video on 16.0.2. This is strictly a bug fix update. Don't expect any changes to performance or battery life. I also have not noticed any new features added in this update either. So all of the major features, changes, potentially performance and battery life improvements, all of that is going to be on the next big point update, which is 16.1. Alright, so now let's talk about what to expect next from Apple. So right now we are on a weekly release schedule for iOS 16.1, the betas. So we should see beta 4 next week, anywhere from the 3rd through the 5th. I would expect to see a beta next week. Now, the final release of 16.1 is also coming out this month in October, and we don't know exactly when that is going to be yet, but it could be anywhere from the week of the 10th to the week of the 24th. I would say somewhere, between mid and late October. I don't think we're going to get it next week. If anything, we could see a 16.0.3 next week. That is also in the cards. Now, we are going to get iPadOS 16 and macOS 13 Ventura this month as well. So we were thinking there was going to be an Apple event, and now we think there might not be. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But I think that the release of 16.1 for iPadOS, will kind of correlate with the iOS 16.1 release. So it really all depends on when Apple is expected to release, the new iPads and the new Macs, and also launch iPadOS 16 and macOS Ventura. So we'll have to wait and see, but expect all of that, near the end of this month. All right, so now let's move on to the latest Apple news. And let's start with the biggest story of this past week, and that is Apple reversing their plan to increase iPhone 14 production due to lower demand across the board. And this report comes from Bloomberg, who reported that Apple has, quote, told suppliers to pull back from efforts to increase assembly of the iPhone 14 product family by as many as 6 million units in the second half of this year. So the company is going to aim to produce 90 million handsets for the period, roughly the same level as the prior year and in line with Apple's original forecast this summer. And a few days ago, Ming-Chi Kuo reported that Apple increased production of the iPhone 14 Pro by 10% because they were clearly the best sellers this year. But now, Ming-Chi Kuo said this on Twitter: "The rumor that Apple was ditching iPhone production increase sounds a little bit weird to me. As I surveyed before, Apple had production switch plans from 14 and 14 Plus to 14 and 14 Pro Max, and the price cut to the 13, but I did not hear of any overall iPhone production increase plan." And he reiterated his prediction of a 10% increase in the Pro production, but then said that the order increase for the 14 Pro and Pro Max, plus the price cut of the iPhone 13, could offset the potential order cut of the iPhone 14 and 14 Plus. So he said that he expects total 2022 and fourth quarter 2022 iPhone shipments to be roughly aligned with the consensus, despite many people worrying about the recession. And then speaking of production, Apple's longtime chip supplier TSMC reportedly wanted to raise the price of their 3nm process, but Apple said no. According to the Economic Daily News, it was rumored that the price of TSMC would increase next year, ranging from about 6 to 9%, but later it was rumored that there was a negotiated correction, and the increase jumped from 3%, and the growth rate of the mature process was 6%. However, the latest rumor is that Apple refused to raise the price. And this is not normal, by the way. Usually the supplier sets the price and there isn't much wiggle room after that. But this is TSMC's largest client, and Apple is known for negotiating and getting the lowest price given the sheer, production volume that they can output with the iPhone. So we'll have to monitor this and see what ends up happening, but this was pretty interesting to hear about. Now, we're also hearing that the iPhone 15 Ultra is coming next year to replace the Pro Max model, according to Mark Gurman. So in his latest report, he says, quote, "Based on Apple's current pattern, we can expect a revamped iPhone design next year, coinciding with a shift to USB-C and the potential of a new Ultra model replacing the Pro Max." And this would align with their top-of-the-line products, such as the Apple Watch Ultra and the M1 Ultra, but I can't wait for next year's long-awaited shift to USB-C. Hopefully there are no hiccups or delays with that, because that's going to be a huge change for the better for the iPhone. So now let's talk about the alleged October Apple event that we've been thinking is coming for a while now. And according to Mark Gurman, we might not be seeing an October Apple event. So he said this in reference to the M2 Max and iPad Pros: "None of these products are a major departure for Apple. They will get some improved specifications and a chip that was already announced at a formal event in June at the Worldwide Developers Conference. That has me thinking, does Apple really have enough here to make it worth pulling together another highly polished launch event? It seems unlikely. Apple may ultimately end up feeling differently, but I think the company, as of now, is more likely to release its remaining 2022 products via press releases, updates to its website, and briefings with select members of the press rather than via a major iPhone style keynote. So that is really sad to hear. I was really looking forward to another Apple event, but it seems like it might just be a press release, launch this time around. So we'll have to wait and see, but Gurman is usually pretty accurate when he predicts things like this. So we'll have to wait and see, but as of now, do not get your hopes up for an October Apple event. And then finally, let's discuss how an Apple executive got fired over a TikTok video. So Daniel Mack is a TikToker who has a series where he asks people who drive nice cars what they do for a living, and he happened to run into a veteran Apple exec who answered the question in a very unexpected way. So Apple's vice president of procurement put a spin on an old movie quote that went something like, "I have rich cars, play golf, and fondle you can read, but I take weekends and major holidays off. Also, if you're interested, I've got a hell of a dental plan." So that was somewhat of a quote from an old movie, but he did throw in some extra words there. So Bloomberg reported that the video attracted the attention of HR, and then Apple launched an investigation that resulted in Blevin's team of 6 direct reports and several hundred employees being removed from under his management. And now Blevins is departing the company after 22 years. Which is pretty crazy. So there you have it. That is the latest batch of Apple news from this past week, along with some updates on the latest iOS 16 features and changes. If you enjoyed this video, as always, I would appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. Also, make sure to subscribe for more iOS 16 coverage. But anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.